So can you come to order, please? I'd like to, at this point, turn the meeting over to Dan Rosenbeer, our bond underwriter.
Easier to sit down and get up. Hi, again, my name is Dan Rosenbeer. I work with Piper Jaffray. We actually help do the school's 2010 issue. And thanks, Terry, for the introduction. Tonight, we're here for a couple reasons. One of which is to give just a brief summary of kind of what we're planning to do for the next, near future. And another one is to, there's a gentleman from Prakash who's going to come up here in just a little bit, and he's from a potential bond investor who's going to be looking at helping us restructure the debt that is currently outstanding for the school. In a unique set of circumstances, I don't know if anyone has municipal bonds. No? Okay. Much like if you have an outstanding mortgage on your house, you can refinance your house at any time. Right? I mean, if interest rates drop down, you can go ahead and refinance those. Well, in the tax-exempt world, typically, you only get to do that after a period of 10 years. It's called the optional call redemption that the school has. In this particular case, in the 2010 issue, there was a real good opportunity that we were going to be able to get some credit enhancement from the state from a program that was actually developed back in 1990 or 2009. And that program kind of got stalled out for a couple of reasons, but we actually are pretty cautiously optimistic that it's going to happen here pretty soon, either through the legislature in 2013 or just the signature of Mr. Scott, who's the Education Commissioner at the Texas Education Agency. With that being said, there's some financial things that happened to the school last year that I guess were unforeseen, and because of that, we're trying to make sure that we have a long-term viability for the school and give them the option to keep that short window, that call window. So we're going to move it out approximately like 3 years, and then also give them some cash flow flexibility for the next couple of years. And Prakash and his group is actually nice enough to consider coming in and allowing us to do this refinancing and restructuring for the purpose of giving us another opportunity to go at this credit enhancement. And if all that happens, well, we have two choices. Number one, if the credit enhancement doesn't happen, what we're doing is we're trying to put the school in a position that they could come in under the credit that we think they're going to be at the end of this 3 years with some, the new cash flow constraints, and be in a position where they could actually go ahead and refinance their debt and end up a little bit better than what they were in the 2010 issue. Then that's the conservative side. On the other side, if this credit enhancement does happen, then we believe the school will save millions of dollars by reducing their debt service even more by going out these next 3 years and taking advantage of the state-sponsored program. That was a lot of information from a fire hose. I don't know if anyone has any questions or comments. I mean, it's kind of just like an open dialogue. For that matter, we're here honestly so that Oryx can get an idea of what kind of parents actually are sending their kids to your grade school, and get an idea of what kind of parent participation, what kind of things you guys do, what do you like about the school, those types of comments. Later on, within the next few days, we're going to try and put out a survey to get some objective, kind of viewpoints on different facets of the school to make sure that, you guys are still committed to have the school. Because obviously, they don't want to buy millions of dollars worth of bonds if you guys are not in it for a long term. So, which I don't think any of us are, but that we're just trying to kind of lay the framework for what we're trying to do. And yes, sir. Sorry.
Oh, I just wanted to know the specifics of what interest rates you're looking at right now. What are we at now, and what would the bridge be? And I know you can't say specifically what it would be in 3 years, but what are you basing your estimates off of? What do you think that's going to be?
Well, where we were before is we sold
grab some note tool. This is the offering document for the last transaction. The interest rates we had 3 series of bonds for a specific purpose. One of the rates was a 7.25 yield, 7.65, and the taxable bonds. There are some taxable bonds that are always sold with charter schools as a function of some of the bonds that we were actually selling, and also because of the costs and so forth associated with those. Those are at 10.5. So the longest, obviously we don't structure those long because that's pretty high. But that's one of the reasons why we also put the short call in, because we anticipated we'd be in a better credit position when we take that out. And so that's what we currently have. The debt service, just so everyone knows, was anticipated to be actually it's right here. Yeah, 1.3 million in 2013, 1.44 million in 2014, 1.443 in 2015, so on and so on. And so, one of the types of bonds we're actually also trying to go for was a type of bond created under the stimulus bill. ARA is the acronym that was used. And we can't utilize that one, but in the function of this restructuring, what it will do is hopefully get us back to a place where, most importantly, we're creating some cash flow flexibility for the next couple of years. We anticipate that debt service would be $1 million in 2013, 14, and 15, and thereafter it would jump back up. But one of the reasons is the goal is for, honestly, Oryx not to own these for a long period of time, just for 3 years. And so that will give us enough time to get us kind of back into financial foray where we want to be. And so we stand on our own 2 feet and not have to let anyone hold our hand. And those interest rates, right now I really can't say a lot. They're higher than what they were before, because they haven't finalized anything. For
the bridge, they're higher than?
Yeah.
Okay.
But they are higher.
What would the debt service jump up to after that 3-year period?
It would jump up to approximately about $2 million. And one of the reasons that we're trying to structure a specific way is that worst case, what we're trying to do is say, based on what we think revenues and expenditures are going to be, let's say the worst thing happens, right? We think that we'll have, it'll be skinny, but enough coverage that we wouldn't have to shut down the school if things went to the $2 million mark. So we would have enough revenues over expenditures to make those payments. Now that's actually not ideal, not optimal. They don't want that. We don't want that. But what it does change is if we don't do anything, then based on the growth models that we're trying to get to, we're going to have a really hard time making it. And I'm trying to be as nice as possible by saying that. And so what we're trying to do is give an opportunity for the school to really, get its house in order. They've already made a lot of changes already, honestly, that have taken steps so they won't ever be in that situation again. But in the context of that too, there's a few other things they need to work on, and they're doing those as we kind of go through this process. I don't know how much you know, but this is what Brian Garcia and I from Piper, we spend half of our time actually dealing with charter schools and charter school affiliates. It's not easy. It's a story credit. Basically, you're capturing all the great things about the schools and whatever issue you have, and you're putting it in a package, and then you're basically saying, based on this story, will someone give you millions and millions of dollars? And then what will they cost? And so it's a pretty dynamic process, but fortunately for us, we've had someone who's been interested in coming alongside and seeing if they would continue to be interested in trying to make this happen. Again, the goal is not to stay in this thing for a very long time. As a matter of fact, if the state does in fact, hopefully, figure this out and doesn't drive the bureaucratic process crazy like they have in the past, we're hoping that within maybe a year we could actually go ahead and take these bonds out. Even though we have a 3-year kind of window, we can take them out anytime it makes sense. So we're not like buffer. We just and in the offset, if we had to do this, if we would have structured the original deal with a 10-year call, we wouldn't have this option because it'd be so expensive that we would just be stuck. And so it's kind of fortuitous that, and a little bit of a divine intervention that we're kind of where we are. And then with that, a lot of the policies and procedures I think, the board is looking at, and then also, everyone is part of this process, will make this school a much stronger financial institution, but at the same time, it won't degrade any of the great things that are about the school in the way of curriculum, the standards that you have for the kids, and the parental involvement and all that kind of stuff. So that's kind of where we're at.
So the model that you're looking at is in the third year, or I guess it would be in the fourth year of these new bonds. There's a model where the school has 1.2 million better cash flow than we have right now.
With additional growth, yes.
Okay.
They can't actually do that now.
Right. What does that look like? I mean, have we built new buildings here? I mean, what?
Well, there's several different modes they could actually undertake. Part of it is part of the original plan was actually to put 2 additional portables out here, rework some space in this building to provide some extra classrooms where we have like extra space, and then additionally there was thought about a off-site lease for some space that made the most sense, that was close to this facility. And I'll have to tell you more about it, but they haven't decided about it, and I wouldn't want to say anything public that could jeopardize their negotiations.
But the bottom line is adding something like 500 students over what we have today.
Yeah, we have 1,000 students now. I think the numbers we have is roughly about a little over 450 students. They're like about 1,407. And I don't know why that's an exact number, but that's the way it works out. And it also takes into account the fact that the state is actually going to lower the amount of state aid we get per student next year, but that's already incorporated in all of that. Also, there's been some pretty conservative projections based on, even though let's say you have 1,000 kids, let's say in the school, Texas Education Agency doesn't pay you for the 1,000 you have enrolled. They pay you for the kids that show up.
Right.
And so it's called average daily attendance. And so that means that the kids that show up, out of those 1,000 kids, maybe you have, you actually have a pretty good average. But a lot of schools, they run about like 92%. You guys run like north of 95. And so even those were conservative in nature. And so there's other expenses, including for additional staff and all that is incorporated into that model. And so Misty and is working through those budget projections so that we can provide them to Oryx and also the rest of the groups to make sure this all makes sense.
One final, I think it's final. When we have the TEA backing, again, I know you can't project interest rates, but how much difference does that make in terms of but it's a better credit rating to the lender, so
right.
What does that really do as far as interest rate and interest cost?
Everyone has a credit score, right? Like an individual, you have a credit score. In this particular case, it would be like, the school has a credit score, which is currently like double B, when we expect, based on all the things that they've already done and the few things they have left to do, that they can be at a triple B minus by this time frame. Which, by the way, that's triple B. Now, there's one triple B plus school in the entire state. It's Idea Academy. It's down the valley, and they have massive amounts of kids and a much different program than what you guys are doing here. Triple B minus is a very, very solid credit for a charter school. If the state does the program, we estimate that at the least it would be an A-rated credit because the state has a double A. And what they've said is in 2009, they actually set aside money from their budget. And the money that gets paid to charter schools and ISDs comes from what's called the Foundation School Program, or FSP. And they said, we're going to take this 1% of the smallest dollar that we have in our budgets, like cash flows go up and down, and the state, it happens in August. They said, that smallest number is about 150 million in math. And so they're going to make, they said, we promise that we're going to make debt service payments, principal and interest of 150 million if we have private match. And so that's the part that's getting everyone hung up. And so what happened is Dell and Gates and all these people said, we love just giving money to schools, but not money. We promise to give you money. That's kind of our thing we want to do. And the law specified that it had to be kept at the state and the state comptrollers, which is earning a massive 0.25% interest rate on their investments, like a lot of municipalities across the state. And Gates said, I can take my $20 million, I'll earn 12%. And so what we've been in dialogue for the last 9 months, actually, is with the top people at TEA and the Texas Charter School Association and some attorneys to go ahead and change the rule so that, let's say, I don't know if there's a nice benefactor of the school that said, you know what, I have this $500,000 I'm not doing anything with, and I would love to give it just to this school. And so the idea was to take that $500,000 and dedicate it just to ACA and develop a program like that. And they've been very, I would say, accommodating to try and make this program, roll forward. And that's what we're trying to, move. In that particular case, long story long, get your answer is, it'd be about 5% compared to the 7-something that we were before.
Okay, and what does
Considerable savings.
And what does that put the debt service at then after the?
That would put the debt service at less than, I want to say, it'd probably put the debt service right around $750,000 a year.
Would that increase or would that be flat?
Sorry?
Would that be flat or would that be?
No. Ultimately, we try and structure a level debt service.
Okay.
This is a very unique situation.
Okay.
When we did the other transactions, we stair-stepped it because you were having to grow so much. And then at that time, the projections looked like it would be fine to have that level. And anyway, the person that was doing the projections, I need to have more conversation about that. Everyone kind of knows that story. He's no longer with the organization, so that's good. Any other questions? Do you want to, Akash, you want to come up here and just ask some general questions and start going into that?
I thought I was 3 years away from PTOB. Until Saturday, I got a call that I was going for PTOB. Hi, everybody. My name is Prakash, and I work for Oryx Finance in their public finance group. Oryx is, how do I put it? Oryx is a large finance conglomerate. It's like the GE of Japan, GE Finance of Japan, GE Capital of Japan. Leasing businesses, shipping finance, real estate, corporate banking, multiple businesses. The group that I work for is Oryx Municipal Finance. We focus on charter schools, hospitals, toll roads, mostly not-for-profit organizations in the tax-exempt bond market. So we've done a couple of charter school deals with Piper, in other states as well. And I think Dan put it very mildly when he said that charter school credits are tricky. And they indeed are, when we compare it with hospital credits or with toll roads. At the end of the day, it is an essential service, but it is a tricky credit, especially when we talk in terms of a single school charter. The big names like the Ideas and all have multiple schools, so it's a much bigger credit, it's a diversified credit. So even if one charter is withdrawn for whatever reason, there are other charters that can support that credit. So it is a different space, and we're all learning it. And we understand it is an essential credit. So it's an essential service, sorry. When we look at a charter school credit, one of the critical factors that come in is student performance. So at the end of the day, if the students do not perform, then it affects your AYB ratings, and if it affects your AYB ratings, then your future charter renewals are questionable. And that's where parent involvement comes in, and that's why we requested the board and to that, of course, that look, we need to meet the parents and understand the commitment to the academy over here. There's a questionnaire that I have prepared. It's online. I'm sure if the board is okay with it, they'll send it across to you, and you can fill it up for me, please. But since, in a way, it's a positive. The way I look at it, it's a positive that there are very few of you over here. So if any of you kind of wants to volunteer and just for a couple of minutes, like your background, like as in which grade your kids are going to, and why you like this place, and what is it that you expect from the academy, like in terms of what you think are areas that it can be improved in. And for us, it's more of a data point that, this is what parents are looking at, this is how they're evaluating the school, and this is what they expect from the school going forward. So if any of you wants to volunteer. If you don't want, that's fine. That's why I structured the questionnaire so that, if you want to do it online at your own pace and your own comfort, that's fine as well. No pressure.
And like I said, that it's going to be like an online link, and so then you just like click on it, and then it'll have like, it's like
23 questions, yeah.
And just like kind of like ranked by a scale, like 5, woohoo, and like 1, like ooh. And so it's, and then there's a way that he can then go into the system and capture the data from all the people that submit their surveys.
And it's anonymous. You don't have to give out your name or anything. And if somebody, as soon as I came in, they asked me, like, how do you verify if a single IP address gave you like multiple responses? I'll know that.
But I guess tonight's really about hopefully you as parents, and you guys are up here, parents too, like just giving some feedback so that Prakash, when he's doing his credit analysis, can understand what are the what I love about the school, or what are some things that I'm concerned with, or how do I how's my kid learning here different than what I would expect if I took him to a local ISD, or how far do I drive? He was very intrigued about the one parent that comes from Plano.
I heard somebody come from
Plano.
Plano, and I'm like, whoa.
And so we said, we doubt they're here tonight. It's trying to provide some context behind the surveys and the people who did take time out of their day to actually show up, and we do appreciate everyone that did do that, because this is part of it, to try and make this thing work so that we can move to the next step, and what we hope is after this financing is done, then we're kind of on the other side of the slope of the hill, just trying to do all the right things so that it's easy in 3 years to get out of this thing and get much better rates.
My name is Leslie Estes, and I have a son in 2nd grade, John. He's at the Arkansas campus. And just first of all, I'm a parent, and then I'll tell you on the side, I'm a board member with the PTO organization. But first of all, I'm a parent. And so I also have a 15-year-old, and she is the reason John is at Arlington Classics. She went to a local elementary school here in Arlington ISD. Great, she did fine until we got to about 4th grade. The demographics of our area has changed. We live very close to ACA. I only knew one person that attended ACA through church and things before we sent our son there. But demographics changed. At her local school, they stopped giving vocabulary tests because they said parents wouldn't help kids study anymore. They took the math level and they took it down some. So as she entered 6th grade and the standard became lower, I thought, what am I going to do with my little guy when he starts kindergarten? So I began looking around. Actually, the friend of mine said, you need to go check out ACA. So I filled out my information, got in the lottery, and I consider it a blessing that we got in. I am thrilled with ACA. I can't tell you academically where my son is as a 2nd grader. My 15-year-old in high school is going, I learned that exact same thing, but just this year. Not on the same exact level. But the education that he receives is incredible. The teacher ratio that he has, he's not going to get at the local elementary school if I send him there. I've had the opportunity to become part of the PTO and see the parents and get involved. And, we're working on the father-daughter banquet, and we have over 500 dads and their daughters coming to a banquet. They're excited. They're excited about that school. That doesn't happen down the street with my daughter when she was at her elementary school. There's things, there's always things in any organization that, we'd like to say we'd like to make better, or, we can all get on our soapbox and complain about some things. I don't go there. I don't get on the little email groups that, want to complain. I want to go make it better. So I did become a part of the PTO. I did become a parent who wants to be involved. I do want to hear the needs. I do want to help my son. My husband goes and volunteers every morning and opens doors for the kids because he has the time to do it, because we love that. That's what we can do. I think of lots of other parents we can get involved. I think sometimes we kind of don't ask them to get involved as much as possible. But, my husband gets up when it's raining and goes and opens the doors because he loves to see those little kids marching to school every day. I'd love to go sell sweatshirts or go work an event or whatever I can do to help the school. I'm very excited about what Arlington Classics offers my son as an education, and I feel my part as a parent to make it better than the little school I'd send him to down the street. If I get involved, that can only make it better. So, only heard great things as far as other students have continued on. Plan to keep my son there as long as I can, and would be happy to. And have told my friends, I already have friends on the waiting list for kindergartners to hopefully get in. And that's one thing that I think is probably going to be an issue, is that we just can't take enough people in. And I think we've seen that. We have waiting lists, for every grade and things. So I think it's outstanding. The new facility we have here at this campus is phenomenal. I'm very excited about it and what it has to offer. And having 2 campuses in Arlington, I think, is only a plus. And I think we've packed both of them out. So what can you say? Gosh, something must be going right. So, but I'm very excited, and I truly believe in ACA and will do my part to do what I can do to make it successful.
Anything that can be done better?
I'd love to see a little bit more communication, just as a parent. Sometimes I feel like I don't attend a lot of board meetings, but I haven't gone out there and sought to see necessarily always when they are, but even from maybe the board and even from administration, a little bit more communication. I've never been one to say, wow, I'm getting too much communication, they need to stop. But that's with anything that I'm involved in. But a little more communication. Education-wise, though, I go back and say, wow, what I'm helping my son study for on a Thursday night for a test on Friday, I'm going, gosh, did I learn this? It's really, at a 2nd grade level is pretty phenomenal if you sit back and look at what these children are learning and taking in. So, hope that helps.
Yeah, sure. Thank you.
I'll jump in.
Please.
My name is Steve Coffey, and I don't know if I've been a bit of an agitator here recently. I don't know if you've heard my name or.
I haven't.
Okay. Honestly, there's some people in the room who probably didn't want you and I to talk because they were afraid of what I would say to you or what's going on at school. And I have 3 kids in the school. It's my 4th year here. I've got a kindergartner, 2nd grader, and 4th grader over at Arkansas. And I don't take them to school, but my wife drives 2 hours a day altogether. And we live in far north Arlington. And I've been critical this year of, and I've been in the online message groups, and some of the things you hear referred to, they're talking about me. And the reason I have is because outside of ACA, do you live in Arlington? Do you know anything about the other schools? The difference between ACA and the next option, it's a wasteland. I mean, I think about what would happen to my kids if ACA wasn't here, and it's I'd either be shelling out $30,000 a year for private school, or they'd be going to schools where nobody cares. They wouldn't be learning anything. Maybe we have to homeschool them. I don't know, but Plan B is it's impossible to think about, and that's the passion I bring to talking about what's going on here and trying to make sure that ACA stays what it is because it's like an oasis in a desert here, and there is no good second choice. The things I've been critical about are growing pains with the new school, and it's a really difficult process. I'm an IT consultant. I deal with companies and helping them migrate from systems and organizations and do big organizational changes. And so I'm familiar with what ACA is trying to do here in opening a new school. And I've had some differences with the board about some specific strategies they've used to do it and some specific choices they've made. But there's no doubt that it's a difficult process. And I think where we are now, we're on a good track. And nobody really enjoyed hearing me say those things, but I think they had to be said, and I think the school is much better off for what's happening right now. So, I don't know what else you've looked at as far as alternatives, but the parents in this school are the most dedicated you're going to find anywhere around here. They really are.
So when you said you're not sure of what else I've looked at, in any direction that you can point me? Am I missing something over here?
No. From the perspective of a parent, if you really evaluated what our options are, ACA versus something else,
sure.
and it's really horrible options in the public school system or really expensive options in the private school. So, it really is, I don't know if we're still using the marketing phrase anymore, but a private school education at a public school price. And, I really think it's an issue of capacity and an issue of marketing, but, there really isn't a very good reason not to send your kids to ACA unless you don't want to put up with the homework and the high academic expectations. But, I think in Arlington, there's a huge demand for what ACA is producing. And once we have capacity and awareness in the community, I think we'll be waiting lists as far as we can see.
As a parent of a 3-year-old who comes back with homework and then next day feedback that kid has not done his homework, I'm keen to kind of hear from you your feedback on the homework. Since you mentioned that, is that something too much for you, or is it too little?
No, in fact, the only complaints we've had is that we haven't been getting enough in some certain sections. And it's always different from teacher to teacher and classroom to classroom. But no, for the most part, there's been a moderately heavy homework load, and I think that's appropriate. It isn't something that just completely breaks our children's will, but it's enough that we know when they're finished with a section in their math book, they understand it. They know it. And when you compare, some of my nieces and nephews and other kids that we know, if you look at what they're doing, when my daughter came into first grade, she came home the first week with a 200-page novel to read. In public school, they have 4-page pamphlets that are coming home.
Sure.
And, that kind of, one of the problems ACA has is the academics are so good and so advanced that trying to bring in older children is more difficult because if they're in public school, they could be a year or two behind. So that's one of the things I've brought up with the board, that some kind of summer program where we have some kind of on-ramp for those kids to bridge the gap. The way they do in college for kids that don't get an education, you have a supplemental process that brings them in.
So is that something that you think is going to affect the long-term academic ratings, wherein you bring in students who are not used to this curriculum, who are not used to the method of instruction? Do you think that will dilute the ratings?
I don't think kids leave very often. For the most part, I don't know the exact statistics, but I think the kids graduating in 6th and now 7th grade are probably 80-90% kids that came in kindergarten and first grade. So, I mean, everybody, you either drop out pretty quickly because of the high standards, or you stick through it
Sure.
and graduate.
So it's kind of a self-selection process where you survive or you choose
Right.
to go on.
Right. I mean, as a charter school, we can't screen out the candidates,
Yeah, absolutely.
but we
Not
can
fair either.
informally screen them out by maintaining high standards and suggesting that if they can't make it, they should let someone else take their slot rather than, and go to a more appropriate school.
Aside from kindergarten, this is the only year we're going to have a big influx of students that are new to ACA. So we're more than halfway through that one.
And how far do you drive, sir?
Well, I let my wife drive, but it's about a 30-minute trip, which she makes.
Each way?
Yeah, so four times a day, here and back. And we're actually considering moving over here near Bowen, because in a couple of years we'll have a kid here. We'll probably move them all. But yeah, that would be 3 hours. That may be over the threshold for her.
Yeah, please.
I'm Mary Russo. I am the mother of a first grader. This is our first year at ACA. I'm very pleased with the program. We came from Ditto Elementary, which is in the AISD district. I believe it's one of the only 2 exemplary schools left in Arlington after they made some changes to TEA. It was a great school. We had a good year last year, but it is a private school education with no cost, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. I am fortunate because I am a stay-at-home mother, at least for the time being, and I am committed to my son's education. That is the most important thing to me. And so I'm up here a couple of times a week. Chase knows that when he gets home, we've got homework, and I mean, it's just part of it. It isn't, I mean, it's just an expectation. And I want him to have that. They raise the bar over the regular public school, and I know he's learning things that his friends at Ditto are not. And like I said, it was a good school, but they raise the bar, and Chase is expected to meet it. They don't lower it to him. And if he's not meeting it, then it's my responsibility as a parent to get in there and work with him to make sure that he can meet those standards. So I'm very satisfied. I think it's a wonderful school, and I enjoy working towards that goal as a parent and as a volunteer here at the school.
Anything that they can do better? Sorry, I'm like a parrot kind of repeating.
I would say communication. I mean, I agree that I don't think you can get too much. So if I get it for more than one format, it's fine by me. I would just like the information.
Or, yeah, sure, please.
Okay, I've been a first grader here at Bowen Campus Reading House, and I have to agree, it's the best education that you can get. We did come from Dunn Elementary, which is an Arlington ISD school, and I know from this past year he's excelled above and beyond what we ever thought. As far as reading, his math is just incredible. I think compared to the kids that are around my grade, he's probably at a 3rd or 4th grade level in math, and I just think you cannot give that up as far as an education. As a parent, you will do whatever you can, as far as volunteering or that extra time at homework. What's an extra 20 minutes
Sure.
if they're going to get that education? And as far as what we can do better at, I think, again, it's communication. I'm a working mom, and so as far as like volunteering, I would love to volunteer. It's kind of hard to get in to, to find out where you can volunteer at. That's my only complaint.
And as a working mom, how do you find the homework pressure of your kid?
It's not bad at all, no.
Now, is that because it's at the lower grade, you have like less requirement, demands from the parents?
Not
or-
necessarily.
Not necessarily.
A lot of heads shaking.
I would love to see ACA go all the way to 12th grade, to be perfectly honest. Nothing could make me happier. I try not to think about, there's an end right now.
Right.
So there's there's anything we can do to make that happen, that would
Talked
rock
about
my world.
$500,000 before.
Annuities.
I'm sorry?
Any questions for us? Oh, sorry, please.
Yeah, well, I drive quite a long way. My husband and I are in the car about 2 hours a day. We drive in from Duncanville, and we have a first grader, and then in 2 years we'll have a kindergartner. But anyway, we checked out everything when we were looking into kindergartens, and there was one private school that we were looking at that did use Saxon Math and had some other good programs, but it just, I mean, we found the ACA website. There's a whole group of moms in Duncanville that's been checking out the ACA website. It's not quite ready to drive as far as we are, but it's been wonderful. My son comes home just every day from the very beginning. He's excited about learning. This year, they were studying ancient Egypt, and we watched I recorded a program on National Geographic, and he was telling me, "Mom, that's so-and-so's tomb. That's this fair." I didn't even know these things, and he had that knowledge base. He said a couple of days ago he was asking about some president, Dwight Eisenhower, because his teacher is Miss Eisenhower. So he was asking about that president and what did he do. And he said, "Mom, I just love history." I mean, this is a first grader. Spanish from kindergarten on. I don't know of schools that are doing that. Art, music. PE is incredible, the things he's learning there. History, science, and then reading level. He's gone from, he was a young kindergartner, so he had just turned 5, and so we had a few concerns about putting him in that early, especially as a boy. Will he have the concentration to make it? Will he be fine? And he's come so far. He's I think end of the 2nd grade or 3rd grade reading level in 1st grade. And it really is amazing, and it's worth the drive, and we're considering moving up here too. It's a long drive, and it's a lot of gas. But yeah, we're absolutely committed to ACA.
I wanted to just chime in about the extracurricular activities. That's one of my favorite things here. I've got a daughter, my 2nd grader, wants me to play chess with her every night now because she's in the chess club. We're going to the state tournament, and my other one is doing a musical. And it's stuff that the thing you aren't hearing tonight is the dedication of the staff and the teachers. They really go above and beyond as well, doing things after school and in addition to what's required. And there's so much, just not just the academics, but enrichment all the way around with the kids. Stuff that I didn't have. I mean, I never went to a school with a chess club. And maybe in high school there was a musical, but the things they offer here are just beyond what we've seen anywhere else.
So we had the opportunity to tour both the facilities and saw children and heard about the teachers.
Oh, by the way, the photo was in the paper yesterday. Mr. Dafford was correct. So, ACA, every day forget. And an ACA graduate won an award out of all junior highs in the junior high that she attends. Mr. Flanagan's daughter. So they leave here and they still excel.
That's it from my side. I'm glad to kind of go through all the responses once you have take a moment to fill it up. It's probably, my estimate is it will take about 3 to 4 minutes. It's pretty simple.
Can I ask you one?
Please.
What are your concerns, with us?
No concerns as a type. I mean, we do a very detailed credit review. Everything else is secondary for us. At the end of the day, are the fundamentals strong or not? And enrollment numbers and parent involvement, the indirect effect that it has is number one for us, because as people who are providing capital and kind of like buying the bonds in this case. What we have this one measure called loan to value. At the end of the day, we are answerable to our investors because they have given us money in the faith and hope that we will generate some secure return for them. In our case, it's our parent company, Oryx Japan. And in the charter school space, it's tricky because the real assets that are the underlying assets, the loan to value ranges from all the way from 30 to 70 or 80%. In a few good cases, probably 90%, maybe. And we're talking about like the BBB plus cases. For whatever reason, if enrollment numbers drop and the debt service coverage ratios go down, we would be left with a bag, nothing else. Principal recovery is out of question. And then we would have to take the hit, and there's a whole waterfall story behind that. So for us, the main concern in charter school space is the sustainability of the enrollments. And that's why it comes back to parents' involvement and teachers' contribution to sustain those enrollment numbers, to keep it attractive and competitive in the market space, because there are many more charters coming up. We see a big movement in kind of large charter operators growing for the sake of growing. Will they be able to sustain their good performance that they've had so far? I don't know. Time will tell. That's why it matters to us to look at the big picture while we are looking and working through the logistics of the security and the rates and everything. The big picture, is it a sustainable model at the end of the day? Yes, it is an essential service, but is it sustainable? Because if a parent is not happy, they're gone. And what are we left with? So that's the background.
So what do you think the loan value is for ACA?
If you look at the assets, probably what about 30%, 30 to 40%? The hard assets I'm talking about. There are soft assets. The exemplary ratings over the past 5 years, parents' involvement, teachers, the board. There's a lot of soft values to which you cannot attach a percentage or a dollar value, but that is why we are here. That is why we met all of them, and that's how we kind of form an opinion.
Okay. Thank you.
It sounds crazy, but in this sector, while it is public education, when the outside finance world is looking at charter school credits, it's really a small business. And the business is of public education. And so you have to foster demand, and you have to control costs, and you have to make that equilibrium between offering a very strong, good product, maintaining the culture and everything else you've done to make your school so great, and balance that with doing so at a sustainable level so that you can keep the facilities nice and then additionally go out and provide additional curriculum that's challenging and it's going to continue to provide a lot of demand, because that's the real key, is to make sure that you want every year to have a list of parents and families that want to get into this school, and that's a big driver to help that, okay, with the growth numbers that Missy was putting together, it's based off of that. I mean, there's a wait list now. We can look at how many kids there are and project, okay, well, this is where we want to go. And in the past, with the exception of just this one particular facility, they've done an incredible job using organic growth, where you bring them in for the very reason we talked about earlier. You bring them in kindergarten, they're in the system, and then they're better, I guess, prepared as they enter the next grade, and that bar is advanced even higher. And so, but at the same time, it is an open enrollment charter school, and so you have to deal with the series of, okay, if I've got 2 spaces, 2 seats available, and third grade, I got to fill those. Where am I going to fill those, from? And the choice isn't always going to be, the kids that were in second grade from our school last year. And so that's part of just trying to work through those dynamics to make sure that kid try and get up to speed as quick as possible, so that not only do they want to stay, but as they stay, they contribute and they continue to make the school a better place. Any questions on any of this stuff we've been going over?
And I can leave my email address as well, and you have it through. So anytime, any questions, please feel free to shoot.
And we're on and I know the information hasn't been a lot, but I mean, we've actually been trying, because we have to do this thing by March 1st. Not a lot of time. Normally, it honestly, the normal process is about 4 to 6 months, and we're compressing it in about 6 weeks. And so, give credit to a lot of sleepless nights for a lot of people, and just showing odd hours from their jobs and everything else, just to make this a possibility. But your feedback is very important. So we'll be getting the survey out to you in the very near future. And as more details become available and some of the negotiations finalized, we'll have more information that actually be disseminated to everyone, so everyone knows what's going on. And then that's all I got, guys.
So will the survey go out to all of the parents that have students here at ACA? Is that the plan for that?
To go out to school reach.
School reach. I just want to make sure there's enough information that people don't panic as to why. I mean, enough communication goes behind a survey, because surveys sometimes scare people that something's wrong. This, it's a good. This survey is a good thing. It's.
Yes.
I just want to make sure that we tell people this is a good thing to help you.
I'll post this video online, if nothing else. So people have some background.
True. Is there anything else we can tell y'all at this point that we're allowed to? Well, I guess with that, thank you. I mean, I guess there's like more formal other things going on.
Okay. No other questions for us, fellows? Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks.
So, I guess we're going to you guys too. So we're going to close there. We'll send that survey out via school, which will be advised, the best mechanism. You might also look at the link on the website. With more explanation of the objective. Thank you. First item on the agenda is an evaluation of business consultants assignments. I think a very further definition of the scope of the business consultants assignments. And I think what this is, we're talking about Mr. Dan. And we would like to see the scope of his work related to the financial aspects of the funds.
Right.
Okay, I'm sorry. Okay, sorry. Limit the scope to the financial aspects of the bonds. Is that stated appropriately? Anybody? Clarification there?
What we can do is if that's the desire, we'll go ahead and take that back and we'll need a response back from owners and stuff about that. I don't think that's a problem. I think part of it was also designed so that he can help out with some of the other policies and procedures that weren't necessarily that was going to carry a little bit past some kind of communication policy and some kind of some other things like that, and then help with the budget.
And the financial policies that we carry past.
Yeah. But not like all time. Not like it was a limited role.
Yes.
So we'll try to be more exact in the scope of coverage. We'll get that back.
Anybody have anything to add to that?
When do you think we'll get back?
By tomorrow?
Yeah, and I'll send, how about send you the name that our attorneys ask for comments. We have some of those comments. I don't know if I sent that to you or not.
No.
Okay.
Yeah, you said. I'm sorry, if you did. If you don't mind, just send it. That'd be great.
Okay. Oh, okay.
I believe
Doesn't
so.
say on the contract, we're wondering when they're going to do the first bill.
I will find out, and I will also get that back to you.
Anything else? And then we had discussion of the ACA bond restructure terms. Is there something other than that we already know that we have to present?
I mean, we talked about it, you know, just
Pretty much here.
a little bit ago, and you know, we talked about it the first part of the meeting, just the cash flow, how they would be, you know, designed so that the first couple of years would be $1 million for the debt service, and then it would go up to $2 million in 16. And what that would do is provide some extra cash flow flexibility using some existing funds, and it would also create a fund of about $650,000 could be used for other construction type projects for like the other two portables, and also chairs and equipment. But some of that was going to be finalized with what actual, you know, capital items could be, you know, defined. And then it would also, if you didn't use it on that, then it could be used for the repayment of debt service. Also to discuss, there's another option that, you know, Oryx was talking about, where the taxable piece of the bonds, as you have additional cash flow up above a certain level, and they need to see the cash flows before they can, you know, finalize this. But they would go ahead and prepay the taxable piece, which is the higher coupon, so you're paying down early. So at the end of the day, you get out of your most costliest debt quicker, and then also gives you cash flow flexibility that gets us really close, like I said before, to a 1 times coverage on the $2 million debt service number, worst case. And so that's where we're trying to go with that. And then that's it. And that's basically what we talked about. So what it allows us to do is use some of the funds that we have right now that will give us the flexibility, and then what we're hoping is with the bond covenants that come out of this discussion, once they get the cash flows, they will be in a position that once we refinance the debt, we could be potentially BBB minus. Once that happens, we kind of will, you know, ride out a little better than what we were before. And then best case scenario, we end up with, again, the credit enhancement program from the state, either via, you know, the Commissioner Scott basically writing in the rules, like he's talked about, you know, a change like his deputy, or I mean his chief of staff has talked about, Todd Webster, or legislatively through 2013 legislative session, just to make one. It's actually changing 3 words in the existing law. So we don't think that should be a monster hurdle to achieve. And then, any questions or concerns about the structure?
What, do you need anything next from us?
We have I think all the supporting documentation from your staff to fill out the back of the offering document, the appendices, which includes your testing scores, your wait list, your enrollment, your demographics, all that kind of stuff. And then after we have that, we'll kind of format it all nice and we'll send it to them for review. And then
Then
You
there's
have
basic-
that, or you're waiting for that?
No, we got that today.
You got it today, okay.
And so then, there's just one or two minor tweaks, I think, for certain things in the cash flow schedules that have been discussed earlier. And then once those get done, then we can also, that can be forwarded to Oryx and take a look at it and start really talking about bond covenants and so forth.
Anybody else have questions?
I do. I think you touched on it earlier, but, and I know nobody wants the scenario we're not planning on the 2016 where we're continuing the setup, but could you talk a little bit more about that? If things, for whatever reason.
Everything goes wrong that could go wrong.
Yes. Give me a worst case. So,
Worst case? A worst case scenario would be something like this. That for some reason interest rates go to like 20% and are like so significantly higher that at the time, even with your credit enhancement from the state and or just if that's not available, just your own credit, interest rates have climbed so high that it's not feasible to actually refinance the bonds. If that's the case, then the debt service jumps to $2 million, and so that's what we were trying to do, is structure a mechanism so that we could feel comfortable enough with the cash flows that if that indeed did happen, we could, be covered. And I know that or for one of the bonds, longer than 3 years, and I can't speak for them, but that they would, you'd probably have to sit down with them and just see where you guys were at that point in time. But the design was that to create the interim cash flow flexibility so we can position ourselves to take these bonds out. What we're hoping is a worst case, we still have potentially enough cash flow flexibility with the prepayment of the taxable pieces to be under that, so you can afford your payments. If you got to that point, I think you would have to restructure in some way just what some of your bond covenants were, so they could meet those, because it would be pretty close. And then I would think, though, if interest rates were actually trending that direction, that you would do something ahead of that, honestly. I don't think you'd want to wait until 2015 and then try and do something. I think you want to move right away. What we're hoping is that the cash flow constraints and everything else, as we move closer to being a stronger credit, and if this other thing does come to fruition, you'd execute that as soon as that was even available. Either if your credit quality was strong enough and or you had the credit enhancer from the state, you move like that.
Now, the Fed has said they're not going to do anything until the end of 2014 at the earliest.
That's what Bernanke's last statement was.
Things should stay reasonably stable until then, although it's not controlled only by the Fed.
True.
But they do set an environment with the Treasury rates that kind of is the baseline for things.
True.
Anybody else?
Yes. My concerns are, part of the reason why we're here is because of if they didn't come to fruition. And we're saying those words again. And I'm concerned that the commissioner or his designee will just keep pushing this to the back burner, because there has not been a great deal of love for charter schools in the state of Texas. And that interest rates are not predictable, and that we're counting on a significant amount of stability, which, quite frankly, I don't think is going to be a problem for us. We have a great deal of loyalty with our families. But counting on an increased credit rating is, well, quite frankly, like me counting on being 5'6" and blonde happen. So it's just, I'm kind of voicing my concerns about that. I'm not opposed to this, I'm just voicing my concerns that we are going to be, if, up against the wall again.
I think there are legitimate concerns. I would say there's just one thing to consider. I mean, it's, the other option is we don't do anything, and then you have enough money to carry you to 2014, and then you really don't have an option because now our call date is 2010, 20. And those interest rates still do the same things that we're talking about. And but I think the difference with one caveat too is that we did say some ifs, but part of those ifs happened because one particular person, and we didn't have the policies and procedures that you're going to have. The reporting to the board and all of the things that you're going to have now would give you an indication that something's awry and you need to make adjustments right away. And I would also say that I believe the way it's structured up, there's not a lot of room, honestly, to not try and hit those targets. Because there's some stipulations to try and say, you need to be within these certain guidelines, and if you're not, we got a problem.
I just wanted it put on the record and on tape that we're not just hooked, and
we're doing everything.
We're a bit more realistic about what could go wrong.
Yes, no, I would agree, and there's no way we could know. In 2010, unfortunately, what was going to transpire this year, but hopefully we've taken some part of the human element out with some of the things that's going to be required to do. And I think also eventually you'll see hopefully a lot more of just people, us and others, just in a variety of situations, just trying to help cultivate it along, make sure we're all doing what we're supposed to be doing.
How much of our debt were we supposed to have been able to refinance under the QSEP program? Out of the 16?
$5.25 million. And it had an interest rate of approximately 2.5% at the highest for 19 years. Last time we ran. Huh?
It's 20 minutes.
It's what?
It's 20 minutes.
20 years. 20 years.
And there's absolutely no chance that we're getting that deal with you.
Unfortunately, no, because the way the projects were bid out, we tried to get as many, I would say, liberal opinions from the IRS as we could about that particular situation. They did not. They said you had to bid the projects with that specifically. And your bond counsel and also our underwriters counsel team did a lot of work trying to make sure that we could do that. But unfortunately, sometimes the IRS is unwieldy, not flexible.
Is there anything on the horizon that suggests that the IRS may change its parameters or definition in a way that would benefit?
No, unless they come out with another program and you build another school. The problem was that the projects had to be bid with what's called Davis-Bacon wage rate requirements. And Davis-Bacon was a law that was enacted a long, long time ago that basically sets the standard for each county of what a wage rate is. And you'll find that in Tarrant County there's a different wage rate for someone who does plumbing, and someone a different wage rate than someone that does taping and bedding and putting up walls like that. And typically, most people, because this is a right-to-work state, Texas typically doesn't use those standards. When you go out and you do your contracts for construction, especially public entities like ISDs, charter schools, whatnot, the the actual labor force that's in the market is a much cheaper wage rate. And so you never use those. I mean, why would you subject yourself to higher cost construction if there's no other reason? However, the QSCB rules stated that that's what needed to happen, was that when the project was bid, that those specifications were in there. Technically, we know now even that, I mean, the IRS doesn't really have a lot of recourse. If you did put them in there, because they were just saying, we're going to do this, but your contractor said, I said I was going to do it, but I just decided not to. They can't just go back and after you. So, but it did have to be in there originally. And if that wasn't in there originally, then we can't go back in there afterwards. Even if the wage rates were high enough, that you could say, see, this actually qualified, without actually checking the little box. The IRS wasn't going to allow us to go back and change all those projects as to, quote, qualified school construction projects. And we went through numerous presentations and a number of conversations, too numerous to mention, and for some reason, Dean didn't do that. I don't know why.
Any other questions? All right, thank you.
And if we'll be sending out like probably another just like email with the questions, and then also stuff about Jim Dam, and also once we get the structure like finalized, you kind of know where the numbers are, but just like also the bond covenants, we'll come back and let everyone know what's going on. If anyone has any questions in the meantime, please don't hesitate to give us a shout. All the steps, pretty much, I think, the timeline steps have all taken place so that we can meet the March 1st date, if that's what y'all choose you want to do. So that's good news. I mean, it's...
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
We're going back to
Thanks. Thank you.
You going back to close? Under what?
And we'll just come to open the close to...
Okay. What is there another? There wasn't anything else on the agenda.
What's on the agenda? It's
He's asking what?
Real property, purchase, sale, exchange, lease, or real
Section
property.
551072 for the purpose of discussing the purchase of real property, exchange, lease, or the value of real property.
Okay. There wasn't an agenda item for that. That reference was cited.
Under the closed.
Based on what we talked about here, there's some elements we need to talk about that are still under negotiation.
Okay. I mean, obviously I can't stop y'all from doing anything, but I have been reading quite a bit about the notice requirements, and that there wasn't an item on the agenda about giving notice that you were going to talk about that. And maybe, I guess that's questionable if you want to cite the reference to the law as being an agenda item. But
What's your opinion, Misty? It doesn't have a letter next to it.
And yeah, as a practical matter, if y'all aren't making a decision on it, it probably doesn't matter. But technically, that isn't how it's supposed to work, as far as I understand.
Well, no, it's the discussion of the bond restructure item, but it's using that code to move it to close.
Yes.
So it's using the item C under the action items. And according to the Open Meetings Act, if it's on the agenda, it doesn't have to be listed under closed. It can
Yeah,
be an action.
I agree. That's true.
Yeah.
So
That's what it is. We're just
okay.
there's some negotiable items in there that we can still use in closed session.